Hello, everybody, and welcome to this APCHA, Pitkin County Housing Authority meeting of October 21st, 2020. It is almost feeling like winter out there. Cindy, would you open us up by reading the roll, please?
Yes. Skippy.
Present.
John.
Present.
David. But he waved.
Great.
Rachel.
Here.
Kelly.
I'm here.
Carson.
Here.
Who am I missing? George.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So everybody is present. To open the meeting today, rather than me blathering on, I had the opportunity to serve on a nonprofit board a number of years ago, which ultimately became a group called Lead with Love. And it was the first time that I was introduced to intention setting for board meetings. And I was a little like, what is this? It was weird, but I was amazed at the sort of shared presence and focus that it provided. And so rather than me talking, I've asked Nicole Lindstrom from Lead with Love to come and just do a little 2-minute brief intro for us, just to get us all on the same page. And then we will jump right into public comments. So Nicole, the floor is yours. And thank
Hello.
you.
Thank you so much, Skippy, and hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to be here with you tonight and to see all of you over Zoom. If you should accept this invitation, I would like to guide you through an experience of centering and intention setting so that you may have a wonderful meeting and time together tonight. So to get started, if you would please just sit back, place both of your feet down onto the ground and take your hands and place your hands directly on top of your thigh bones. And we'll begin by closing the eyes. So by closing the eyes, you let go of any external sensation and you move inward. So eyes closed. And together, let's take a deep inhale through your nose. Exhale out through the mouth. Okay, 2 more deep inhale through the nose. Full exhale. And last one, deep inhale. Full exhale. Now go ahead and keep the eyes closed, but lift your right foot off the ground. And then set your right foot back on the ground. Now lift your left foot off the ground, left foot back onto the ground. Okay, pressing through both of your feet, lift your 10 toes up and feel the 4 corners of your feet pressing down towards the earth. And then slowly inhale, rise, lift through the spine, lift through the crown of your head. And then again, exhale to soften through the breath. Now calling to mind why you are here tonight. So what is the purpose of this meeting and what is the purpose of your time together? And as you reflect on the beginning of this meeting, why are you here? What is your unique contribution to this time? Why are you volunteering your time to be here, to be part of this group and of this meeting? What is your intention? And feeling that clarity come into focus within your mind. Let's set the unified intention of coming together to serve the community, to be of service to our fellow community members for the highest and best of our community, knowing that this time together tonight will be impactful in the pathway forward, knowing that as you come together, what you create is only possible through this group and this group alone. The outcome will be the derivative of what you co-create together. And in that awareness, that knowing, setting the intention to stay open, receptive, engaging with one another's ideas, thoughts, beliefs, and how to proceed, so that together you can co-create the pathway forward. And feeling that intention, again, take a deep inhale, full exhale, and slowly open your eyes. Welcome back to the room. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful meeting.
Thank you, Nicole, so much for doing that. I already feel refreshed.
Skippy, before we go much farther, I want to let the record reflect that I am here.
Thank you for that, Rick. Rick is present. I see him in everything. All right, beautiful. Doubling down, that's great. Beautiful. Well, I'd like to turn then to comment. I do believe we have a few people on the line. This is an opportunity, 3 minutes or less, for anything not on the agenda. And start at the bottom and move up. Sonia, if you could unmute yourself, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Here I am. Took me a second to figure it out. Thank you very much for taking a minute just to listen to me. I wrote probably all of you guys some emails. It'll be a little redundant, but I just wanted to take a minute to talk to you guys. And I left my picture off because I'm nervous speaking in front of people, so I apologize. I wanted to take a minute to talk to you guys about how deeply this is going to affect my children losing my housing. They're essentially suffering for a mistake that I did, and they're going to be losing the home that they've had for the last 5 years. And I've come to terms, with, taking responsibility for me not providing that paperwork in a timely manner. But to be blacklisted forever for life will essentially be leaving the kids and I homeless and homeschooling during a pandemic. I'm terrified what that'll do to my children's well-being and health. I do agree that I didn't provide the information, but some things that I haven't spoke about before is during that time, I was in a severely abusive relationship, and I just didn't have the mental capacity to get that paperwork together. I was suffering from PTSD, and but since that, I have gotten my paperwork together, and I would be willing and able to provide all that information and continue to provide that information on a regular basis if I could, apply to People's Humanity to give us a chance. I just want my kids to have a great life and be a part of the community and grow up to be good people. And this is really going to affect them. So thank you for taking the time. If there's anything that I could do to help my situation, if you guys have any suggestions of any avenues, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for coming and speaking. I appreciate it. Diane, without wanting to have anyone jump in and obviously discuss this case now, is there anything that staff could do to provide us or me just some information about how we might be able to think about expressing the compassion that we want to build into this program while still making sure that we are working within the bounds of the legal framework that is required for the functioning and accountability in the system?
Diane, just to let you know, this was a legal case. We won that legal case. And I don't know
Yeah.
if this is the forum to really go further and talk about this.
Yeah, it's not. And Cindy, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I actually spoke today with the, emailed with the APCHA's attorney and can talk to you offline about it, Mr.
Perfect.
Chairman.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Diane. I very much appreciate that. Okay. Melissa, are you on here for public comment? I see your name at the bottom. No?
Melissa
Okay.
actually works for the city. She's just
Anybody
here
else?
to assist.
What's that?
Works for the county. Melissa works for the county.
Oh, sorry.
She's just here to assist.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Melissa. I'm learning all the names.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to say Melissa is a valuable part of our HomeTrek team and is a super technology person, and we're really lucky to have her, and she works full-time for the county, and it's a wonderful partnership.
I'm so glad we could call on you for this intro, Melissa. Thank you for all of your hard work. I really appreciate it. So last opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone else on this call who I cannot see who'd like to speak up? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public comment portion of this and turn it over to Diane and staff for executive director's comments, a little explanation on how these will work going forward.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, may I share my screen?
You absolutely may.
Patty, can you help me share my screen? I've got that disabled right now.
No.
There we go. Sorry about that. You should be all set now.
Awesome. Nope. Thank you, Maddie. Thanks. I totally appreciate it. And share.
I made mine bigger.
And are you seeing anything yet?
I see your slide deck, Diane. So
Oh, good. Okay. Let me
now
see if
I
can
see
get
your
it into-
emails.
Okay. Let me
Probably not
go
what you want.
take- Yeah. No, these are a couple.
There
You want to know about the Wheeler? I have lots of information in my email about Wheeler today.
Yep, but not now.
Let's see. Okay, so you can see my slides. Let me get to slideshow. And
Perfect.
are you seeing slides?
Yeah,
All
we
right,
see
hey,
the
thank
next
you.
slide view,
Thanks
but
for
that should be
patience with
fine.
me.
That should work.
Okay. All right. Quick executive director recruitment update. Sorry, let me make sure I set my timer. The one piece of update is that we have actually, as of last Friday, we had 22 requests for the proposal. So we posted it to what's called BidNet, which is a very common site that recruiters look for. Actually, all kind of government RFPs. We also sent it to 10 well-known and well-respected firms that deal with recruitments for city managers, assistant city managers, and department heads. So I was really excited when I saw the list, and that closes this week, and we're still on track. I wanted to put this slide in here. I had a good, Cindy and I had a nice conversation with Skippy over the past couple weeks, and he shared that in his discussions with the board, there was an interest in just having generally a more of a better idea about what staff does and what staff is up to. And so first and foremost, to invite you, if any of you want to, we can schedule time to meet on Microsoft Teams. Happy to kind of walk you through that and provide some more background. Cindy is an awesome person for that as well. And I've learned a lot from her. But I thought I would share, this is I'm 8 weeks into APCHA, and this is kind of my view of the world. And it's at first it was a little simplistic because I do think what APCHA does, right, when I first learned about APCHA, it was pretty scary and it's really complex. However, what we do is it's pretty straightforward, right? Sales and rentals, qualifications, and compliance, I view those as two sides of the same coin. And we do property management. And they're really focused. However, on a per capita basis, right, one of the largest programs in the nation, and it's been around for a long time, and the complexity in deed restrictions, and staff is doing a wonderful job of updating those as properties turn over and standardizing those. But because of the 50-year-old history, there are quite literally hundreds of different deed restrictions. So every time there's a compliance case, it's not just, well, how do we deal with this? It's how do we deal with this relative to this deed restriction? And then thirdly, the idea of what adds to the complexity is the enormous pressure on both the program and correspondingly on staff, right? And these aren't things that you don't know, right? Median income versus free market home prices, demand for properties, right? Every single lottery, and then that competition for the units being so high, it actually gives us even a greater obligation that we have qualifications that are strict and straightforward. So I just thought I'd share that because this is really, I would say at least 85 to 90% of what staff at APCHA does, and I include myself in that, and I am involved in a lot of really detailed discussions about things like compliance or what's happening with properties. So I just thought I'd share that as a kind of view of the world, and of course, I would be greatly remiss if I didn't mention that then there's this other giant thing called HomeTrek. I sent out an email to staff yesterday that between November 15th and the end of December, obviously holidays excluded, but I asked them to mark out at least half of their calendar, at half of every day for HomeTrek, and I include myself in that. I'll be supporting them in kind of canceling meetings and really focusing, because that is our final round of user acceptance testing and our ability. At the end of January, we finish our warranty period. We do plan on launching the community portal to the public in January. We want to put it through its paces, and we'll be not only demonstrating the HomeTrek to you and to the Board of County Commissioners and to the City Council, but we'll also be inviting you to help us with some of the user acceptance testing, where we can try to put it through its paces. And it is a very complex system, so it's sometimes challenging to find what the staff calls every story associated with how someone could interact with the system. So we're on track. It's going well, and we're excited about a January launch. And that's it for me.
Easy peasy. Thank you so much, Diane.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? If you do, just put up your little digital hands, and if you don't remember, the way we do that is just you click participants at the bottom, and then at the bottom of that participants list, there is a gray button that says raise hand. Seeing none. Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much, Diane. I appreciate that. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. It's just the minutes of October 7th. If you have any corrections, please raise your hand.
Skippy?
Yes.
What about table comments from your board members?
We've moved that to the bottom of the agenda, and so we will get there. I'll make sure we get to that before we are at 7 o'clock.
Okay, is that going to be a policy shift in the agenda from now on?
Yes, we are going to, well, we're going to try this out. It was a suggestion from a board member, and I think a good one. So we'll try this out for a bit, and we'll see how it goes. And as always, I'm happy to take feedback on that, but I'll ask that we try it for a few meetings before we get feedback.
Well, I'll be happy to try it for a few minutes, but I think it would have been respectful to ask all of us how we felt about that. You know, sometimes you want to say something before the issues that you're going to be talking about on the agenda, but I'll play ball with the way we're doing it now. I was just wondering. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And you and everyone else will have an opportunity to talk about everything on the agenda and make sure that you have the opportunity for input there. We won't miss you.
Thanks.
Any other hands? Kelly, I see your real hand, but when we get into the work session...
I'm delayed, sorry.
Perfect.
I just want to comment on Diane's presentation quickly, because while all of that seems very straightforward to us, what stands out to me a bit is that she didn't talk at all about like developing housing, applying for grants related to update or improvements of housing. And I just point that out because I see it in the papers kind of almost daily that there continues to be this conflating of APCHA's role with, the city and the county and other partners' role as the actual developers of housing. And so this is just going to be something you'll probably hear me beat the drum on a little bit more as far as our efforts on public education about what we do and what our charge is, because they kind of get tied together a lot. And I think that that's a disservice to the community when you actually have different boards, that constituencies should identify and address their concerns with about various issues with housing. So I just want to point that out, and I'll that'll be one of the things that I've taken up as kind of my public education effort. Thanks.
Beautiful.
If I can, Skippy, just for a second, I really appreciate that comment because I didn't know that APCHA wasn't a housing development agency, right? When I first came to the city, right? And that's a key distinction between APCHA and a lot of other housing agencies. And I think part of the reason I put that little piece together was that is I'm joining you in that effort to educate the public about the role of APCHA versus the city and the county. So thanks.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dan. Okay. So now, not seeing any, we will move on to the consent calendar, which is the minutes of October 2nd or 7th. If anyone has any amendments to the minutes, raise your hand to make them. Otherwise, I would accept a verbal motion.
I move to approve.
First from Rick, second.
Second.
There it is. All right, a first from Rick, a second from George. Cindy, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Rick.
Yes.
John. John.
John, you are muted, sir.
I gotta unmute me.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Carson.
Throw on muter guy.
Great, thanks. Carson.
Yes.
Skippy.
Yes.
And George.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, so moving on to our next agenda item. This is 2021 budgets. So whoever is presenting on staff, please run us through it.
First of all, I'd like to know if you want to go through each one, if there's a specific, or if you mainly want to concentrate on like the 620 fund. I know you've seen some of these, I believe. If you want to give me any direction of how you'd like us to go through this, that would be great.
Sure. So the question I would ask, is there a request for a deep dive on any particular one of these from anybody? George?
Skippy?
Yep.
I had my hand raised, but maybe you didn't see it.
I just called on you, sorry.
Oh, okay. I couldn't read the budget because it was the way it was formatted. It was sideways in my computer.
Me too.
Yes.
So Diane, if you could, not only for us, but because it's on GrassRoots now, if you just give us an overview of each fund, and then if someone has any questions, they can delve into it.
Work for everybody.
And thanks to Cindy. Cindy's actually leading this. I know Cindy's over at the BOCC conference room, which is why she's not on video. Sorry.
So with regards to the 620 fund, the current subsidy for 2020 was $809,400. What they were first, which is split between the county and the city, $404,700 each. The 2021 base budget is keeping it the same, but we are asking for a supplemental request for the 2021 budget of $70,450 each from both the city and the county to make it a total subsidy of $475,150. So that is about a 17% increase over 2020. If you do have a chance to look at the 620 Housing Administration Fund, it does go down in 2022 and by about 6%. And one of the reasons is the city is hoping that in 2022, Burlingame 3 will be coming up for sale, and that revenue adds to our bottom line. So the subsidy ends up being less for that. The initial document, or the first document that I sent you, the Housing Authority gets a certain management fee from the city housing properties and from the tax credit properties. For each property, we get a 12% property management fee based on the the rental rates. The city of Aspen, when they went through everything, they figured that the rental rates are probably going to go down a little bit in 2021. So our budget was decreased a little bit with regards to those revenues. So our bottom line was a little bit lower. What we're doing though is instead of we're using some of the fund balance on this, so that there really isn't a hit to the city or the county with regards to any additional amount that we would need. So that is one of the things that
Cindy?
Yes.
Cindy, can I ask you one question, just from George? I think he's right. Is it possible to get a screen share of this while you're talking about it?
Let's check.
I can try. Just give me one moment, okay?
If you guys can, that'd be great. Thank you, George. And Dave, I see you. Do you want to jump in while they're looking at that? Dave, I can't hear you.
Hey, Maddie, I can do it if you want.
Yeah, if you could do that, that would be great.
I have saved that in our shared drive, Diane, the most recent one.
There we go. We can do that. Dave, I'm going to try and unmute you from here.
Cindy, this is the one from the packet.
Yes. And this is the most recent one. This is the one that I believe is going to City Council and the Board of County Commissioners for approval. So you can see with regards to the subsidy going across from 2019 through 2025, the subsidy right now is $809,400. We were hoping to keep it the same in 2021, but we are asking for that supplemental request of $70,450 each. So that would bring the subsidy up to $475,150. You can see the revenues down towards the bottom that are coming in, which with that increase of subsidy takes up the revenue for 2021 up to $1.876 million for the revenues coming in. The next line down, you're going to see foreclosures. That is the $500,000 is an amount that we keep in there in case we have to buy any units on the courthouse steps. And we have, but usually when we go to sell them, we end up at least breaking even on those, so we can replenish those funds. We've been lucky that we haven't had more than 2 or 3 that at the same time that have gone through foreclosure. Is there any questions basically on this page right now?
Yes,
I have a hand from David Lofren. David? I still can't hear you. Oh no. Is there anything that we can do, staff on the back end, to try and get Dave's audio back?
You may have Dave just try to get out and get back in. That's happened to me in the past.
Yeah, Dave,
Yeah,
you want
there's
to try
one-
that and I'll make sure you're first up?
David, there's one other thing you can try. To the right of your microphone, there should be an arrow, and then you can select. You should see a couple choices, and sometimes it's the functional equivalent of kicking your microphone simply by choosing one and then go back and choose the other one. And while David's working that out, I did just want to highlight that this 70,000 here, I think Cindy mentioned this, but this number, Cindy worked with budget department on taking this from 112,000 that we discussed about HomeTrek 2 weeks ago down to 70,000. And Cindy, can you explain the technical part of why that was possible?
Yes, that was because we had additional fund balance at the end of last year. We have used that fund balance, so it's not 112 that we have to take from both the city and the county each. It's because we're using some of that fund balance, it's just the 70,450. So we're asking for less additional money based on using that fund balance that we have.
Kelly, I see you. And David, if we can't hear you, I'm going to try and call you and see if I can get your audio through the phone. Kelly, go for it.
Thanks. I have a couple questions, and I'll just rattle them off. You can take them in order that you prefer. Can you talk about the subsidy projections over the 5-year plan and those going up? What expenses is that related to? And then
Can't really.
what is, when we look at the other revenues line all the way down at the bottom, what is that capturing? Thanks.
With regards to the projections, I know that what happens, I believe, and I wish City Finance might have been on this call, but they look at overall what our revenues might be and what the bottom line is going to be, and they've come up with some of those projections. In 2022, it goes down because we are getting additional revenues from the sale of Burlingame Phase 3, so that's why that's going down. I think the projection going into 2023 going up 24%. I wish I could give you a solid answer on that. Diane, I don't know if you have a solid answer on why the increase is so much.
I think the only thing you're seeing is in that number, I believe, is because we're able to cover some of the increases due to HomeTrek using fund balance. And right now we're just, I've mentioned at the last meeting that we will look at ways to offset that or reduce those costs over time. But for now, we need to forecast it as HomeTrek, and I believe that's what you're seeing there. The reason it's not increasing as much in the next two is because of that fund balance.
And
Any other questions?
Any other questions on that?
No, not on that. Just on the other revenue line item.
Well, the other revenue has to do with the fees that we collect, sales fees, application fees, recertification fees. When we do land use reviews, we charge certain fees for those as well, both the city and the county side. We also get when you see the Truscott housing, that is a property management fee that we get a certain amount. It's 12% based on the rental rates. And that's where some of that's for the property management of all the properties that we take care of for the city. The Truscott housing up above with the, where it says property facility maintenance, we also get money back from them for the maintenance of those properties. So when our maintenance staff does any work on these properties, they charge their time to these properties, and we are reimbursed. We're credited back on the time that our maintenance stays on it. So that's our maintenance line, and then below that is the property management line. So we get paid for both of those, the management fees and then the maintenance. Does that make sense, Kelly?
Kelly, you are muted. Sorry,
I'm muted and I shrunk everybody. Yeah, that's fine. I was more concerned with just that last line item there. So from what I understand from you, you say that that's due to fees. Well, I guess maybe I'm not clear on what that is, because everything you mentioned that falls into another line item. So sales fees, management fees. So when I'm looking at the other revenues down at the bottom, like $500,000.
Oh, that's the foreclosure fund. The $500,000 has to do with
Okay.
the foreclosure fund. Okay, and that's specifically used for those. So they include that in as the total of as the total for us is that 500,000.
Okay. Okay. Oh, got it. I see. Thank you.
And just if you want to know what the million is, the transfer from the APCHA Development Fund, what that's going to be is for the purchase of the property at Burlingame. So if you see that in 2020, that $1 million, that's what that is. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Cindy. Anything else, Kelly? Nope. Okay, David Loughran, I've got you through my phone. Go for it. Oh, you're good. Okay, great. And just so you know, if you speak up next time, you'll have to bring the phone up because it'll be really quiet. Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, Cindy, do you want to keep us moving?
Sure. The next page on that is the actual expenses. And we do have this broken down into general administrative versus, again, our maintenance. Then we have compliance, qualification, sales. And we also have to keep a targeted reserve of 12.5% of uses for our budget as well. And so our ending fund balance for 2020 is $622,275, of which we're using some of that to keep the subsidy down in 2021. So that's why that fund balance goes down to $416,331. And you can also see that the APCHA offices, you can see what it costs us to rent our office space. That's the rental amount and the HOA that we pay. So that's kind of what it costs us for our housing at Park Central West, just to let you know, that $90,140.
George had a question.
I've got a question. Cindy.
Thanks.
Yeah, George, go ahead.
Yeah, Cindy, under HomeTrek Ops, last month we talked about an ongoing expense was going to be around $77,000. And so is that in these numbers?
It's the 70,000 is our regular one, and I know that this was what Diane was working on. The 224,825 was what our additional software on an ongoing basis is going to be. And for 2021, that is what it's around 112 for both the city and the county to make it up to 224 for our software. But when you saw on the front, we are using some of the fund balance, so the city doesn't have to pay, or the county and city do not have to pay the 112 each on this. We're not requesting that as a supplemental. We're only requesting 70,000 each from both entities, and we're using our fund balance to get that down. But as you see in 2022, that does go up to 229,000. What the city does is they do a specific increase. I think it's either a 2 or 3% increase each year to take it forward for projections. So that's kind of where some of that comes from as well, is they're just doing a specific type of increase unless they know something specific is happening in that year. Does that make sense?
What I recall is, again, last month we talked about an additional subsidy that was going to be about $112,000 for HomeTrek. And I understand how it's been reduced for 2021, but during that same conversation, you talked about ongoing maintenance expenses for HomeTrek was going to be around 70,000+ each year going forward. That's my question. Where's that being reflected?
Yes. Let me take that one, Cindy. Thank you, George. So what the $70,000 you see here, this number was basically forecasted to be the HomeTrek operational cost for every year going out, and it had like a 2% increase in it. What we came to you last time and said, actually for 2021 in this blue column, the actual cost for this year, which is going to be a little bit higher than in ongoing years, because there are some year one operational costs that are a little higher. The actual is $294. We had $70,000 budgeted, and then we needed an additional 112 from the county county and city to get to this 224. That 112 or that 224 has been reduced to the additional subsidy to be 140 or $70,000 city and county each because of the additional fund balance. You'll remember too that while we told you year one operating cost is $294 for HomeTrek, year two the costs aren't quite as high. Some of the costs drop off year two, and so that's what you see there is what Cindy said about there's our base kind of run rate and then that 2% kind of inflationary increase year over year. George, that does not look like it answered your question.
Well, it's hard to sort of break that out, but I'll let Rick go.
Okay, and I will tell you, what is super confusing is that $70,000 number that we're asking from each of the city and the county, which is a different 70.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It just seems like it'd be clear if you were able to break out the ongoing maintenance charges at HomeTrek or the licensing, whatever that line item would be, to break that out separately.
Well, that's what that is.
It is. It's the 294. So that 294 is I believe I calculated the number at like 91% of that is straight up software. There's $20,000 for Slate Communications to help us with marketing and making sure what we put on the website, makes sense and looks good. They're going to be helping us with some translation services. So that is 91% of that 294 is software costs, as is the same number moving forward. There are little tiny things in there like Chargent, which is an online charging application. There's $6,000 for that. There's $610 for MailChimp, and I'm happy to walk you through the breakdown of every piece of software that creates HomeTrek.
No, that's fine. That's not necessary.
Ben, I have a hand up from Kelly.
But it's super.
I think Rick was before me.
Oh, Rick, I didn't see a hand up there. Go for it.
I see that we're paying $90,000 per year for the Park Central West office space. And then in 2024, I guess we move into the City Hall. I thought that building was going to be completed prior to that, but I guess we have a long-term lease that we're going to honor.
No.
I noticed that it almost doubles when we move into the city office space. Why would we not continue the lease at $90,000 instead of paying $180,000?
Cindy, do you want me to take that?
Yes, because I thought I wasn't 100% sure if they knew exactly where we were moving anyway.
Yeah, and this is so we haven't shared this with you because it's not definite and it's still in flux. And Cindy has given our landlord a heads up that we're looking to reduce our cost for APCHA. Right? That's a high run rate, and just one of the things I love about Cindy is how closely she manages the budget. we're definitely looking at that, and we may actually be moving. We're working right now with the asset team and with the city manager on that, and we may be looking actually at Truscott.
So if we did move forward and move into the city hall spaces, why would it be doubling our costs? I mean, what are we getting double the size space, or how do we justify that?
Can Rachel answer that?
I was
think
going to say
Rachel knows the answer to that.
and I thought she knows. Yeah, Rachel.
Rick, it really is something that your own real estate clients might ask themselves. Do you want to pay more and own something after 20 years, or do you want to continue to pay rent for 100 years? So it is through all of our various departments that are taking space from their budgets, they're paying for their permanent home. So that's the simple explanation. If there seems to be a way to reprogram this and use those construction dollars remodeling the Truscott restaurant for an out-of-town location, that's fine. But I think there's a lot of pros and cons to that about the accessibility of folks visiting the office. So, this was just the kind of programmed thing from where we were with permanent renting versus ownership of a space forever.
Thank you, Rachel. Rick, do you have additional follow-up on this?
Well, I do, but it's on another topic. I was wondering if we ever get to license this Trek program. I don't see a line item for those revenues that we may generate. Is that, we'll put that in here as a line item when that occurs? Is that?
It was. I do know Mike had talked about licensing, and I've talked to the owner's rep, who is really a lot of the strong technical piece behind this, and we're definitely not ready to license this yet. The other piece, and I did talk to her about this. She thought it might be possible to license it to other groups at a nominal fee to allow them to use the code for Hexaware. The challenge I see with licensing this is that any other agency that wants to use it is going to have to pay all of the external software costs, because while there's a lot of customization in this, there is a basic run rate of about $229,000 in software that any other agency wanting to use this would have to pay as a starting point. So it's absolutely on the table. It's not a priority right now, and I'm guessing, what I've guessed is that I believe we could probably start to look at this in the April timeframe more seriously.
Thank you, Diane.
Yep.
Kelly.
So Rick asked the question I had, but it generated another question, and that is, I noticed in this budget construction that we're not paying the city for departmental services rendered, and like HR, IT, those kind of things. In the county, we do that. So I'm wondering about if that will ever change, if that's pretty typical of how the city departmental budgets are managed.
I do know that at one point in time we were charged a certain amount, because the city did break it down as to how many people, how many employees each department had, and so it was a certain percentage. But they've also worked with quality. We were doing that, and then they figured that quality now has their own budget, so we're no longer charged that. So I think some of that overhead was taken away from our budget.
Thank you.
But the general administrative might might have some of that in there. like the clerk's office, a certain amount, the attorney's office, things like that. That general administrative might have some of that in there.
Thanks, Cindy, that makes sense.
Carson, I saw your hand up and then back down. I just want to make sure you didn't have anything you wanted to ask. Nope.
I just, the licensing, that I just,
Cool.
Rick beat me to it.
Got it. All right, Cindy, back to you.
So any more questions on the 620 budget?
Don't see any.
The next page shows the capital projects, and what the capital projects are just mainly 3 items. The $500,000 for the purchase of foreclosed units so that we can maintain the deed restriction on those. HomeTrek of 68, but that's just the I think that, let's see, it's to automate internal functions. That is probably just the one cost for 2021, and then that will change in 2022 and be, I believe the whole $112,000 for each entity. And then of course fleets. We're looking at replacing a couple of vehicles hopefully in 2021. We actually could have replaced them a couple of years ago, but we don't drive our city vehicles a lot, and we figure why replace them when they don't have high mileage. So that has moved forward, just to let you know, for the last couple of years. And it's still a possibility that maybe next year we may not have to use it as well, so we would save on that. So those are the only capital projects for the administrative fund.
Any questions on this? Not seeing any. Let's move on.
And then that one is just for the next 5 years of what our capital projects would be. It's fleet or the out years. And the Core City Network is working with the city on upgrading some of the city network system. One of the things that we are connected to the city directly. We pay an additional fee per month that allows us to do that. And hopefully by the time wherever we move, when the building's done or whatever, that's gonna be something that will go away, because we'll be in a building that we have total access with the city. So that's the intranet. That's where we're part of the city, and getting into some of the drives and stuff that the city has.
Any questions? Seeing none.
So the next one is the Truscott Housing Fund, and this is just to let you know, this is a city-owned project. So this is a budget that the city does approve. It is definitely something that you should still review. You can see down towards the bottom where it says housing, sales, and rental services, that $153,990. That was decreased a little bit from the first budget that I sent out, and that's because they were basing it on the rental rates, and they believe that they're going to be down a little bit next year, so that's why that went down for the property management. The facilities maintenance didn't, because our personnel and stuff is basically the same for that we don't, it's people work 40 hours a week or whatever, so and with their benefits and stuff, so that doesn't change. So there is a debt service on this. There are some bonds that need to be paid off, and the city does they will oversee all of this. They're the bonds and stuff they're hoping in it. And if you're looking at this, you can see that in 2022, I believe it is, the bonds are all paid off for this project, which is great. So then what'll happen is that will help with the bottom line and revenue for Truscott Phase 1. Any questions on this page?
Seeing none, we can move on. And is this a good level of detail? I'm just being mindful of time that we have for the work plan. Is it a good level of detail for everyone? I'm just kind of looking for a head nod. Yep. Okay, great. Keep going just like this, Cindy.
So as you can see, the Truscott, I would just go to the next, you can see for the capital projects, there's a lot more, there's quite a few more capital projects for Truscott Phase 1 for 2021. Some of it is like, if you're looking at appliance range oven replacement, when we have turnover, what we do is we look to see if we need to replace anything. So a lot of that figures are in there if we need them. So it's stuff that if we need something, then we have it budgeted for that. So that's what a lot of that is for. One of the reasons why we haven't done a lot of work with the 100 building, those 100 or those 50 units that are in the 100 building, we are, at one point in time, the city has been talking about redeveloping that part. So we haven't done a lot of major stuff to that building, and that's still something that is possibly still being looked at down the line after the Burlingame 3 is done and probably after the lumberyard is done. So that's still out there, the possible redevelopment of the building 100. Any questions on that? Great.
Seeing none.
And then again, this is more of the capital budget spread out through the next 5 years and what we're looking at. You can see there's a lot. So the next budget is Marolt. And Marolt, by the way, we are 100% full for the 2020-2021 winter season, starting November, because we changed in order to get the project full. Instead of requiring everybody to go under lease starting in September, we wanted to make sure that we got the place as full as we possibly could. So we allowed people to go under a lease beginning November 1st. So most people, a ski company, I can't remember how many they took, but I think they've got like 21 units. And there's some other employers that have taken some units, and then there's actually some people who opted in beginning November 1st that are going to be working for the ski company or from another employer within Pitkin County. So so we're happy that Marolt is full. They also have I do not think there's any debt on this property, any bonds that are out on this property. I believe a couple of years ago we paid off all the bonds on this property. So what's happening is because the City Housing Development Fund helped pay some of the debt, the Marolt project is now paying back the Housing Development Fund. You can, yeah, okay. So you can kind of see the fund balance and how it was.
Okay, not seeing any questions.
Great. And again, these are the capital projects for next year in 2021. And again, some of this is, every time we have a turnover, we go in and we assess what we need to do. We have, over the last few years, gone and replaced every single mattress in the property. We try to do a certain building every year so that we don't have all 100 units, which is 200 beds. Actually 300, because you have you have 2 beds, 2 twin beds, and you have basically a futon that's kind of a bed as well. So we try to keep up on replacing those as well over time, so we don't have to do it all at once. And then again, this is the 5 year.
It strikes me as funny that we've got replacement of windows as needed due to breakage or damage. Does that happen often?
Yes, well, it actually happens more. It happened quite a bit at Truscott this year because of we've had a lot of golfers out there, so we've had to. I've never seen so many windows having to be replaced. Marolt is because of the people for the winter students or the winter people that come in. We do have a few windows that we have to replace. Now again, if it's some of that's charged back to the tenant. So if the thing of it is that if we don't have enough because some of the units unfortunately are trashed pretty bad, that we end up using all their security deposit plus some. So on some of these units. So Mark, our property manager for Marolt, really oversees this. And when the music students are in it on a summer basis, he also goes through the property with them before everybody moves in and then after to see what damages need to be covered by the music associates. And then the music associates charge their students who are living in those units.
Any other questions there? Seeing none.
And then again, the 5 year. And by the way, the cafeteria is being redone this year, but the music associates, because they're the only ones that use it, they are the ones that are taking care of that remodel. Smuggler is a project that the board needs to approve. This is because you own this project. This is a very small project, so the budget is very small. As you can see, but there's a fund balance. You have money in this property. It's just a very old project, but it's a Category 1 project, and there's 11 units there, and it's always full. Are there any? What we do with Smuggler right now is we just do the normal, basically wear and tear of the units. We do. When a unit does vacate, we do go through and assess whether the floor needs to be done, new appliances, things like that. We've also, for some of the tenants who have been in there for 15, 20 years, we have started looking at their appliances as well and replacing some of their appliances as well. Any questions on this one?
Seeing none.
And again, the capital projects for this is just the basic. When we have a turnover, we go in and reassess whether we need to redo, put new appliances in, put new flooring in, hot water heaters, things like that. And then that's the capital projects for the next 5 years.
I've got a question from Kelly, Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where is this project? I don't know if I know.
How do I explain where this project is? This
it's right behind where Peter Fornell was going to develop on Park Avenue. It's right between Park Avenue and the way up to Smuggler. On the right side, if you're going
green
up.
and white building, right?
Park and Midland.
I'll pay more attention. There's so many crammed in there, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
get out the next time I'm over there. Thanks.
This
beauty.
building's been around for a while. Smuggler has
It's a
been.
real beauty.
The 641 budget is the Truscott Phase 2, which is a low-income housing tax credit property, a LIHTC property. Part of it was the 10 through 70 buildings were brand new. The 100 or the 200 and the 300 buildings are ones that have been out there for quite a while. This is the Housing Board is a general partner. There is still probably about a $3 or $4 million loan that we have with A.P.C.H.A. The other syndicator was bought out a couple of years ago, so we just have a A.P.C.H.A. loan with them. Honestly, if we could pay this off, it would be wrapped in with Truscott Phase 1. but we don't foresee that happening for the next few years at least. The tax credit probably goes on for maybe another 10 to 12 years, and then it goes back to being a regular category project within our regular regulations. The again, the revenues are right now. The total revenues are for 2021 we're forecasting that they're going to increase. All of our projects, even though we've had quite a bit of turnover this year because of COVID, we have a lot of people who, when we list these units, that want to move in. So the vacancy is taking a little bit longer because we're doing a lot of more disinfecting between people, but we're having no problems in leasing these up.
Kelly, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Is the tax credit, is that where it's showing up in the 620 fund?
Yes, and it shows up in the 620 fund for the for maintenance, because it's not part of the city right now. It shows up as a separate entity, just like Aspen Country Inn. And that's why there's a separate line items for them, and all the management fees and the maintenance comes out of basically the 620 fund. So we're reimbursed for all those. So you see that as an expense, and then you see that as a revenue for both of those.
Thank you.
Any other questions here? Seeing none, let's move.
And then again, and the painting, we actually have done a lot of the painting, so I'm going to double check to make sure that this has not already been completed for this year. If not, it will be completed in 2021. And now this is our Aspen Country Inn Affordable Housing Fund. We went through a major refinance of this, I believe 2 or 3 years ago. The general partner now is the city. The housing authority is a limited partner. So the city is the one that really does approve this budget. You're gonna not see any capital projects on this because it was totally remodeled just a few years ago. So there won't be a lot, you're not gonna see any capital projects coming through on this probably for the next couple of years yet.
We've got a question from Rachel.
Unmute, there we go. Thank you all. This is a little bit more of a broader concept about the Country Inn and maybe a little less about the budget. But I've been thinking a lot about it, and a couple of those units have come up recently, and when they're listed, they're at like $930 some odd a month plus utilities. And I realize this is a city project, and we need to talk with the city council about the future budget. But, this was a senior and low-income priority project via the tax credits. And I think that there was at some time more of a nexus with the county senior services program of potentially eligible candidates for that property. And I think that's kind of been broken. I think it's been a bit lost. I've tried to connect with Nan and Chad, and then, of course, it's all been over COVID this past 8 or 9 months. But what, again, has occurred to me, and Cindy knows I'm kind of inquiring about this, is nothing that APCHA is doing wrong. But, those units are advertised as open on Monday and deadline is closed on Wednesday night. And it's like, 48 or 76 hours or something for people to know it's even there, to apply and then be reviewed. So I know we've all been talking so much about how do we readdress occupancy and how do we create a situation where people are willing and interested in moving out of a larger unit. They may have empty bedrooms. And it just strikes me that there's got to be something we can do working within the Country Inn to be a bit of a demo project or see what we can create. And I think the number one thing, anyone in an ownership situation moving to something like a rental at the Country Inn is going to want is security and knowing they can't be evicted after they've sold their family home. But I think we really need to brainstorm around the Country Inn, both how can we see it really match our seniors' needs. And I think there's been some problems at times with some of our seniors who, some of which are literally homeless during the summer, being able to get their W-2s in line from a 50-year career here. You know, you may have been an odd job person, and even the IRS has been a mess this year. Anyone trying to get tax forms from them has known they're not very responsive. So anyhow, I'll just leave it at that. But I think that if we're really talking about low-income seniors living close to a Social Security income, these rents would not even be affordable for them to consider. And I know it's a hard project to fill for people who are younger and working one or two jobs because their incomes exceed this. But I just think that there has to be some ways that we can create a better nexus with the county and with our senior community to get qualified tenants in there. And I'd like to see us make, collectively through the city's efforts and APCHA's, make this possible. Thank you.
And Rachel, just to let you know, with regards to Aspen Country Inn, if somebody is over the age of 65, they don't really have to show us that long of a work history. We do, unless we've got 3 or 4 people that are over 65, and then we try to do it by the person with the longest work history. Also, with regards to the rental rates, we do not charge the maximum rental rates allowed by CHA. We charge less, and I'll tell you, they've asked us why we do that. But it is something that I know that was a concern from the board a long time ago. And I do know that the board at one point in time did provide some subsidy to this project out of your 632, which is the housing development fund for the board. So those rents are still lower than what we can charge. But I agree, that's one of the reasons why we have a hard time filling Aspen Country Inn, because the income is pretty low and the rental rate's a little bit higher than what somebody can afford, but it's still less than what we can charge. So I did want you to know that we do not charge the maximum that CHA has listed in through HUD.
Yeah, and I understand, and this is not, I don't want to bog this conversation down. I think it's something that the city should look at with its funding of this project and be flexible that if we find someone who it would be 30% or 33% of their income if we were charging $700 a month, to do a few units at that lower rate and have some flexibility in the overall pro forma of the project. But again, I think that if we're really going to start talking about how do we maximize the occupancy of our existing units, or how do we create a desirable and incentivized move out, move down program for seniors, we have a building we could start experimenting with a little bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel. And I put down a note as well, because when we get into guideline changes, this fits neatly into 2 of the categories. So I've got a note down to revisit.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none?
Thank you. And what will happen is that for the first meeting in November, I will just bring back something formal for a resolution, just approving these, approving all these budgets. And it's basically, for most of them, it's a recommendation to the city to go ahead, and that you guys are okay with the way the budgets are.
Great. So Cindy, that will not be today. That'll come back at the next meeting?
Right. Correct.
So the question I have for everyone is just, if you're planning to approve as is, then you need to do nothing. But if you have remaining questions or concerns before you can offer your support, please raise your hand and let us know now. Okay, it looks like you're in the clear there, Cindy. So thank you for walking us. Oh, I got George.
I was just going to say, in terms of the 620 fund, I think when Cindy makes a presentation to the BOCC, that will be the direction that we'll provide to the board, the APCHA board.
Great. So it looks like
thank
we're in
you.
alignment here. I did just want to give, I was going to ask Sarah if she had anything to add, but it looks like she is off the call. So, okay. So if it seems good to everyone else, we can move on to the main event here, which is the review of 2021 work plan. As mentioned, we do have time at the end of this meeting for director's comments, so I will keep an eye on that to make sure that we get back to it. So if everyone can kind of pull up their draft work plan, there are these sort of 5 questions. I'd love to get through the first 3 for sure, possibly into the 4th today, if possible. And the only other thing that I want to say before we just jump in is several of our board members had what I think was a really great idea, which is having somebody play this a devil's advocate role in these more complex meetings, somebody who from a sort of safe place is designated to sort of poke at ideas so that we can ask the tough questions up front, sometimes known as red teaming. Carson was particularly pumped to do that. So Carson's going to play that role if and when appropriate today. So if he has questions about anything you bring forward or I bring forward, it's not from a place of disagreement. It's just from a place of helping us reform or refine those as much as possible. So with that, the first question.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, super quick question. Sorry about that. I don't have an electronic hand because I'm a co-host.
Yes, I know.
I do have slides. I know you want them to go through the questions. I do have slides of the whole work plan and then each task on a separate slide so it can be read. Do you want me to show any or all of them?
That would be great. If we could start with a page that has all of them for these first ones, that would be amazing. Perfect. Okay, great. I got that, and now I can see the sidebar as well. So the first question is just to get this one out of the way. Is there anybody who thinks this is perfect as is, needs no amendments, redactions, or changes? If so, raise your digital hand. Cool. So we all think it needs a little bit of discussion. That's great. So the second question is, as looking at what is currently proposed here, are there any of these boxes that anyone thinks should be eliminated entirely? If there is a box you think should be eliminated, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay, awesome.
Well,
so then the next question, the inverse of that, is there anything that you think is missing or that you would like to suggest to the group get added? This doesn't need to be an entire program. We know staff is limited. It could be a request for just a meeting, but this is sort of the opportunity to get anything that you would like to see on the agenda for this year that isn't here, so don't waste it. And I see George up first.
Oh, thanks. I just want to go back. I lost it on my screen. Back to the chart, and I can't find it now. But my comment was on regarding outreach, and we had this discussion almost a year ago now in terms of facilitator to go out and provide opportunities for outreach for some of these key issues. And I saw on that box that there was a question whether we should utilize a facilitator or have board members facilitate. And at that time, I strongly said that I don't think that the board should be in the role of facilitation. That's sort of a skill level that requires some training, and also it also, I think, puts board members in sort of more of a difficult position. So I would encourage that if we do any outreach, that we hire a professional facilitator.
Great. Thank you for that, George. And I had pulled up the last subcommittee brief that was kind of the last suggestion in yesterday's world, and that did include a professional facilitator. But I will make sure that when we come back to the fifth question, which is tactics, we take the measure of the board on that. But I think last we had spoke, we were sort of in alignment with that. Thank you. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add that's not included here? Rick.
You say Rick or Rachel?
Rachel.
Okay, sorry. You know, I'm okay with this. I just want to kind of put a footnote perhaps to the overall draft, is that there's times when dates are going to slide, or we'll have it down for 2 meetings and a decision, and it will take a third. Yeah. And we just have to be aware of that. It's great to have an outline like this and to try to hold to a really vigorous schedule. But as I've can't remember who said it, it's better to have an issue well discussed and not decided than decided but not well discussed. And so, you know, I want to keep us on track, but, you know, I get a little nervous when I see this meeting, that meeting, no matter what. And there will be things that will pop up on our agenda we hadn't anticipated in the course of our daily, weekly business on top of the work plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. I think that's super well said. Quality as being most important, and we will definitely do that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else have anything for an addition? Seeing none, I will just raise one thing that I heard from not all of the board, but from enough board members that I think is worth mentioning, which is some desire to explore funding in some way. And I will say that City Council is also looking at new, amended, refined funding streams for housing. And so I would like to put forth, not that this be an area of focus, but that maybe we have part of or one meeting dedicated to talking about this, and if there's an interest in the future, and if so, how we may coordinate that exploration with City Council's efforts. So I put that on the table, and I see a hand from Kelly.
My hand was not raised in relation to that, but I will comment on that, I guess.
Comment on that, and then Rachel raised her hand, I think, in relation, and then I'll switch back to you on a new topic.
That's fine, yeah. So to me, the idea seems appropriate for a joint city-county meeting, then perhaps coming back to APCHA to, you know, summarize and seek some input on those conversations. But again, you know, separating the developer conversation from the operational conversation, you know, we have important work to do as the APCHA board on funds, you know, healthy funds in terms of fee structure and things like that. So, you know, my preference would be to focus them in the correct arenas. And that's, I have more, but you can come back to me.
I'll come right back to you. I just want to keep Rachel on topic.
Yeah. Thank you for that. You know, perhaps there's a slot in here, Skippy, for something like that, but I don't know that I would call it funding. You know, and really it answers that plan. Is there anything that's missing from this? Frankly, I think a little more connectedness of both the city and the county's housing development work. I know we had a presentation, you know, maybe 2-3 months ago about where the city is and its processes already, and an update from the county of where it is with Phillips Curve. But we've never had a discussion of if the city had more money to give the county, would they be able to do 10 more units there? We've just never even embarked on that sort of collaborative planning anymore, because the APCHA is not really the function for that. And, you know, as a result of that, we're kind of getting everyone saying, oh, the lumberyard's the last best chance ever for anything. And it's not. I mean, if we weren't focused on every last dollar going to the lumberyard, perhaps we could have a few quicker units happening at Phillips Curve more than they are planning for right now within their limited budgets. So for me, funding is an important question, but it's not something you take to the public until, A, there's a lot of trust restored in the program, and B, there are some pretty succinct dollar amounts calculated as to what we will need and why and what it will accomplish for us. So, I just don't want to, as you said, we already have a pretty good work plan for the year. And if there's anything I'd like to see added to the work plan, it's not about discussing new funding sources, but it is about how do we collaborate better? How do we kind of reunite our programs a little bit on the development end? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Rachel. So what I would ask is to check in with other opinions on those two things is if you think it is worthwhile to have, a small amount of time dedicated this year to what Rachel suggested, which is some form of collaboration or coordination with city and county around these things, just raise your digital hand so I can take a count.
That'd be good.
Okay, and you can consider my hand up as well. Great, okay, so that looks like something that we are interested in exploring. And then take your hands down, and Kelly, I still will come back to you. And then the second question is, raise your digital hand if you think it would be worth spending half a meeting to a meeting discussing funding issues, either as kind of isolated at APCHA or as they relate to city or county efforts. Rachel, I'm guessing your hand is that intended to be up? Okay, cool. All right, so I got Carson and myself, so that's just two. So we're going to scratch that guy. Just to close loop, does anyone have any further comments on this sort of connection piece that they would like to add? No doubt we will continue this conversation at the next meeting, so staff can add a box with some ideas, but is there anything you'd want to make sure that they hear prior to coming back with a box? George.
Oh, I just want to suggest that at some point when you get into 2021, you allocate some time for a strategic retreat, board retreat.
Okay. Rachel?
Oh, no, I have a hand down.
Oh, I'll put you down. There you go. All right. Any other thoughts on this sort of connection collaboration piece? Kelly, we'll go back to you if not. Don't see anyone else. All right, Kelly, jump in wherever.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just some observations. I think that this calendaring will guide your efforts, Skippy, for future agendas. So, I think that's really great. And I would note, in addition, I think that would be helpful when we review this with our boards is connecting the work plan to the strategic plan goals. So just some assessment of where each of these are hitting those goals. And then I also noticed that I'm not remembering in our strategic plan goals what the asterisks stand for. So when I was sort of looking at this and looking back at the goals to say oh, are we hitting everything and what not, if not, I couldn't remember what we were trying to highlight with that. So if someone could answer that for me, that'd be great. Thanks.
Is there anyone who can, on staff, who can answer that question for Kelly?
I'll tell you, I watched, before I was hired, I was watching the strategic planning meetings, and I didn't know, like Kelly, I didn't know what it was. I asked the ad agency, Slate Communications, they were the ones who put everything together, and sorry, my cat just changed slides. I asked them about the asterisk, and they didn't know what it was. So, yeah, no idea.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about George's suggestion really quickly about a 2021 strategic retreat.
Sorry, before you move on, sorry, I want to make sure, oh no, my cat just changed my, my note page as well. Okay, I'm back. Can you, for me, so I make sure I get this into the work plan, can you kind of give me a headline on what that task, G would be? Like, you talked about city, county coordination, collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel, do you want to summarize?
Well, we can come up with a better title afterwards, but it's increased collaboration, coordination between the development roles of the city and county.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Kelly, do you have anything else, or just hands still up? Awesome. So just pivoting to George's suggestion about a 2021 strategic retreat or some kind. George, can you bring to life a little bit what you envision in that retreat? Is it a 2-hour workshop, a 3-day boot camp? What are you thinking?
Well, I think typically, I think it's beneficial for every board to have an annual retreat. It's an opportunity to step back from the day-to-day operations and do some more long-term planning and visioning. And in this case, because you'll just be coming off of 1 year of actually working on a strategic plan, it's an opportunity to revisit the strategic plan and make sure things are going the way the board wishes them to go, or if they need to make some adaptations to adapt or to make some changes, it's an opportunity to do that. So, it's up to the board. I think you should allow at least a half a day for a board retreat, but I won't be around, so it's up to you guys.
True. Well, it'll be your legacy. All right. Let me get digital hands if sometime in the next, let's say, 12 months, so not immediately, 12 to 18 months, you would find value in doing some form of longer form retreat.
Yeah.
Cool. That looks like a firm yes. So of any of you guys who raised your hands, put them down so I know it's not a vote, and then put them back up if you have any thoughts on kind of programming or, what might that look like to you as most successful? Rachel. Rachel, you are on mute.
I know. I've been trying to unmute. Skippy, I don't think we can really discuss programming now, but I would say later in the year is really accurate. You will have new board members in the county commission, and you will have new city council members by next April. Commissioners January. And so it's possible the direction of either board on any of these matters could change, or the designee to this board.
Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah, I would note, I think it would be a really valuable time spent with a new director. So I do think we should plan that time for after they've onboarded for a period.
Great. Any other thoughts on this piece? Otherwise, we'll have staff start to think about what this could look like in the future machine. Okay. So back to that original question. Anything else that anyone? Oh, sorry, John.
Sorry, I'm still unmute. I'm looking at the capital reserves and your time frame, and I don't know if I'm behind topic or not, but to me that seems like a huge undertaking where I think it's going to take some creativity. I think it's going to take some good discussion, and I'm not sure 2 meetings or two two get-togethers are enough to get anywhere on that discussion.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to the individual boxes and then
Okay.
kind of build that stuff out. But yes, I think it's gonna be a lot more than 2 meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. Kelly?
Sorry, I don't have anything right now.
Okay. Again, just last chance. Anything else to add? Otherwise, what the takeaway will be is these boxes plus some collaboration, coordination work that'll be relatively limited in scope but important, and then some future planning for a yearly review type retreat. Okay. So I will kind of close that area of questioning, and now we'll really get into the meat of this. I will say we've kind of got 15 minutes here or so. I'd really like to focus not on the details of the how yet. At the next meeting, you guys all come prepared, read the boxes about what is going to be the sort of sequence of events within a particular area. So John, as you talked about, that will be at the next meeting, the time to be like, hey, in capital reserve discussion, I think we need 7 meetings and here's the order I think that they should be in, or whatever that is. But what I would like to try to hone in on here is of these things that are going on, you need to forgive me, I'm looking at like 4 screens at once. So we have the capital reserves discussion, we have this compliance, prioritization, community engagement, and HomeTrek is really for staff, and then the guideline update. So guidelines, capital reserves, compliance, prioritization, and community engagement. How do we think about the sequencing of these? Should these happen one at a time? And if so, do you have a recommendation on which would go first or last? Or should they happen concurrently in some way? For instance, is maybe we have an initial discussion on the capital reserves because we know we have to outline a process, but that then has to get kicked to council and to Board of Commissioners. And so while they're doing that, rather than waiting on it, we are working on something else. So I really just want to open the floor, raise your hands. We'll kind of take some just initial thoughts that anyone may have around this, and I will take some notes and we'll try to coalesce around some ideas. Rachel.
I just had that fast trigger figure. Sorry, guys. For me, I would work on the guidelines, which we've been talking about for a long time and are only partially finished. I think that that's got to be a key, and I would pair that actually with compliance and our conversations about prioritizing compliance, what type of cases, where should we put our resources the most. And the thing that's interesting to me right now, just thinking about this, and I know we have Diane online and Cindy and others, but there really has to be, at some point, some staff input as to how much they can handle and do and deliver for us, and how much they're going to be able to prepare what we need for the meetings. I really am dying to dive into capital reserves, but I also know that the information gathering that we're going to request is going to be pretty severe. There's probably information that we're not really even going to have in hand until HomeTrek has been fully implemented. And we've talked about this at council a bit, and it's really, our discussion has got to be about how to come up with a process that we all will buy into, participate in, and hopefully reach some resolution over. Because, it's going to be a money answer, and that money answer is going to go back to the city as a request, more likely than not, whether it's incentivizing or assisting or how we go about this. So it's obviously got to be something that the people with those purse strings are bought into and understand the need and the priorities. We all know there's a lot of ironies, incongruities, and inconsistencies in the capital reserves across 3,000 units. And it's going to take a lot of time and framing. So I want to make sure we're doing the work that we can do quickly and reasonably, and not have the guidelines hanging out 9 months from now because we're still troubling with capital reserves.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Rachel, I just want to reflect back what I heard just to make sure that I heard you right and we're on the same page, which is guidelines and compliance are things that can be done in a layered way and could begin relatively soon. Capital reserves are a much more complicated piece that will require a lot of staff time to gather information to work on, and so that may need to come later, and the process piece that will be guided by APCHA, not the actual work that requires all of that, is something that we could propose to these other groups.
Yeah, correct. And again, I think that might be something that, given Diane's work now, she'll be able to get us back again to this task A. Almost everything, to my mind, the success is related to task A, but what type of information we will be able to receive from that. You know, when you hear her say we have hundreds of different deed restrictions out there, that's a clue to the complexity of this.
That's great. Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to go to Carson. George, I do see you there. I just want to get a little bit of a mix of voices right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, I completely agree with Rachel just as far as the compliance prioritization and the HomeTrek, and also on and at least the first part of the capital reserves, that I do think that a lot of the work that we're going to ask staff to do will be reduced with the data from HomeTrek. But I do think that just the capital reserves issue is not going to be just a funding issue. I mean, it is very much going to have to be. Hold on, buddy. It is going to be a policy. It's going to have to be a policy approach combined probably with some money. And I think it is by far the most complex problem that we've got, and also the most costly, and also the one that has the most potential to jeopardize the program. So, I do think that we do need to wait at least until we get sort of the data from HomeTrek, but the capital reserves piece is, as John said, it's not going to be something we're going to solve in a few meetings. It is a very, very, very complex problem, and one that I think that the longer we wait, the worse it gets. And so, I would make the argument that from the capital reserve standpoint, as soon as we get the HomeTrek data, it's time for us to go.
Well, capital reserves, some of that, our guidelines and bylaws and that discussion, we might make changes again to some of that stuff in the capital reserve discussion.
Carson, can I ask a follow-up question there?
Of course.
What I heard was, let's not wait unnecessarily long. We've already been waiting on the capital reserves piece. Let's wait at least till we have HomeTrek so we know what we're talking about. But let's assume HomeTrek is done. We've got that information. Do you envision, or do you propose to us that at that time we focus entirely on that, or do you see that as maybe coming back every 2, 3, or 4 meetings so that there's time in between to either work on other things or for staff the opportunity to sort of dig in?
I mean, I think it's going to have to be a recurring topic because, as I said, I mean, it is so complex, and I don't see how you're going to tackle this problem without some policy changes that I mean, just plainly, I mean, there are some HOAs that are underfunded intentionally, and the longer that we wait to address those, the worse the problem gets. And I think a lot of that is going to have to be done from a policy standpoint. So I think it's going to have to be a recurring topic.
Thank you, Carson. George.
No, thanks. Well, I agree with everything that Rachel and Carson has said. Going back to what I think that the board could do sooner and get accomplished would be going over the guidelines, the eligibility, and the compliance issues. I think that's that's what I think that our citizens are looking for, a better understanding of that. So I would move ahead on that. In terms of the capital reserves, Rachel remembers we only spent a mere year and a half discussing and working on capital reserves, and we actually had come up with two different proposals that was presented to the APCHA board, the previous APCHA board, asking them to review and get back with some recommendations to the BOCC and City Council. That was never accomplished, but there was a lot of groundwork that was done. And when you talk about policy changes, again, it will end up being a funding financing issue that will have to go back to the city and to the county. So there is work that has been done. It'd be, I think it'd be wise to be able to utilize that work, the recommendations, how that came about. But certainly HomeTrek, we knew that HomeTrek was on horizon, and we knew that we needed HomeTrek to fill in the gaps and provide all the missing data and information that we really needed to have a better understanding in terms of the funding and financing that was going to be needed. And you may even think about a special meeting set aside just for that topic, because it is going to be complex and it's going to take more than one shot at it. And an hour at a regular meeting, you're not going to really get anywhere. So that would be my suggestion.
Got it. Thank you for that. I'm not seeing other hands, but I do want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. David, do you have anything that you want to offer on this? You have to talk into the phone so they can hear you.
I certainly agree with everything that's been said so far. Perhaps there are some initial stages and steps that we can take to get the process moving and to educate the community about what is coming and how important it is.
Great. Thank you for that. Back to Carson.
Yes. So just quickly, I mean, sort of what David said and what George just said. I mean, maybe one of the initial steps that we could take just to kind of at least start some work is maybe review what's already been done. I mean, I know that this work has been going on for at least 10 years. And, you know, I mean, if a lot of this has been hashed out, I mean, certainly some of it has changed in 10 years or more, but a lot of it hasn't changed and a lot of it's only gotten worse. And so, you know, maybe the initial step is just to sort of review the discussions that have been had in the past, at least initially.
That's a great idea. And I just want to make sure I'm clear. You are talking about on capital reserves, correct?
Absolutely.
Just making sure. Okay. Rachel.
Carson's a mind reader. I was just going to suggest that I believe Kara Selbonigel with the county has both the city proposal and the county proposal on her hard drive, and through Cindy could get those redistributed to us to take a look at. There were pros and cons, I'd say, from both proposals of how to begin to deal with it, but it is a good starting point. And again, I think for me, part of it was saying, how do we devise this process? Do we end up with 2 members from this board and 2 members from the county and 2 from the city? Do we end up hiring some professional economic professor or something who can look at what we've already laid out as these are the ropes in the Gordian knot? How do we untie them? I don't know, but I think talking about a solid process to get us there, it goes along with having the 2 prior reports and thinking about where we can take it from there. Thank you. But I also, Carson, I have to say, totally agree with you. It's policy changes too, and it could be policy changes in future deeds that are issued by this office. You know, you can't touch one part of the code without changing everything. But if we can move forward with the guidelines discussions, at least now, which is a major overhaul, anything that becomes apparent through the capital reserve work could be a future amendment to that major overhaul.
Rachel. So guys, we do have 10 minutes left in the meeting. As always, our director's comments are optional. So just raise your digital hand if you want to have a comment before the meeting is over. And then we can either move to those or we can have another 10 minutes of discussion here. So I'm not seeing any, so we will just continue here. Rick, did you have anything you wanted to add here?
Yes, I mean, you guys have all stolen my thunder. I agree with everything that's been said. This capital reserve issue is so complex and it's going to take quite a bit of time. I agree with George. Maybe we should just allocate a meeting or two and just tackle this head on. It's going to be really challenging. There are reasons why the former board didn't move forward with any of the proposals from the city and the counties because they in our minds, they were unworkable and unrealistic. But I think we should revisit them and see if we can handpick and cherry pick certain aspects of both proposals and see if we can come up with something moving forward. But we definitely have to have this HomeTrek inform our decisions going forward.
Great. John, did you have anything to add?
No, I think, this discussion and we talked about it, taking from two boards, but now having two members, the makeup of our current board, APCHA board, kind of lends us to work out a solution, right? I mean, it's going to be financial, it's going to be policy. I mean, it's going to be a big task to come up with, we may have to fund, you may have to make some decisions. I've heard lots of things. I've had old board members coming to me and talk to me about it, and they've all got good ideas, but we're figuring out how to implement the right idea because 3,000 units that are going to have maintenance issues across the board, period. So.
Right on. Thank you. Kelly, do you have anything you want to add on these things?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is just...
Sorry, Skippy, can I just jump in for just a second? Sorry, it's Diane.
Sorry, I can't see you because of the presentation.
Sorry. Yeah, in fact, I don't think we need that up anymore. Plus, then you get to see my cat. Her name's Princess Buttercup. Just based on what I
have a dog that would love to chase it.
Yeah, mine does too. Based on what I've heard on the regulations/guidelines piece, I was wondering, in addition to next week, I know you want to talk about the how of each one. We could bring back as staff, we could bring back a discussion about a potential approach for how to restart that. This week, Bethany came up with a great idea for doing a survey, and she actually started to draft one that we could send out to kind of gauge for the public which ones are they the most interested on the guidelines, gauge some initial, and then be able to build online public meetings based on that. And anyway, I can tell you more about the process later, but if you'd like, in addition to going into some more detail on the work plan, we could also bring you a discussion about, even a 30-minute discussion about ideas about how to start through the regulations.
Yeah, thank you for that, Diana. You're going exactly where I was going to go with some questions right before we finish. So what I wanted to do is, and I have nothing to add because y'all have said it perfectly as far as I'm concerned, is try to reflect back what I've heard kind of collectively for a thumbs up as to a way that staff can come back. And then there's a question that I think we haven't answered, which is exactly what Diane's talking about. But what I've heard from everyone is that let's get to work quickly on guidelines and compliance. We can start digging into that right away. And then once HomeTrek is up and we have information, we do want to start to move forward on capital reserves, knowing that it's a long-term project. And what that could look like is a initial meeting, or could be meetings, but meeting really on a history lesson, catching us up to what has been tried before, worked or hasn't worked. And that could be layered in with that guideline work. And then the second, after we've had that, which would also be layered in with that, is a meeting on process, where we can take that information that we've learned and create a proposed process that we can then send to council and Board of County Commissioners and we can continue working on guidelines and compliance while that happens. And then once we have agreement, we can kind of figure out the next steps. Does that, raise your hand if that sounds roughly like what we were talking about? And I think, so, Rachel, can you clarify first? Yeah.
Thank you. The only thing that I didn't think was quite accurate, Skippy, was I don't think we have to wait till the HomeTrek work is done for us to start talking about the process.
Okay.
That's the information we need in the process, but we could start working on that beforehand. And I think that the one thing I want to add to the layering you're doing, which I think is good, is that we need to know that we got to a certain point where something is complete. We can't get to a point where we have 3 or 4 layered processes happening. We have to say some come to completion and then, you know, maybe some have started tentatively, but now they get the full bore effort. But I just don't want to start having too many things layered over top of each other. Thank you.
Great. With that clarification, that makes sense to me. Put your hand up if you're in broad agreement. This isn't a final vote. It'll come back next week in a more and a clearer way from staff. But put your hand up if it sounds like roughly the right direction. Okay, awesome, great. Diane, if you could shoot me an email, I'd love to just coordinate with you guys on maybe what that looks like in the next packet. That would be great. The last question that we don't have time for here, but I want you guys to think about, take out your sketch pads. In the next meeting, the first question that I will ask is, we have some public outreach, and the question is, as we start guideline review, should public outreach happen concurrently? So we do one at the board, we do one in the public, we do 2 at the board, we do 2 in the public, or should it be staged where the board goes through all 7 areas and then we go to the public afterwards? So if you guys could come prepared with some thoughts around that, that would be the first question. And then the second question, which you already have, which is F, or the 5th question for this one is the sort of tactics and strategies. So within the boxes of guideline, regulation updates, capital reserves, and compliance and community engagement, please look at those. And if you have differing ideas for how this should be staged, John, this is again your 7-meeting proposition, please bring those to the next meeting. And I think the goal will be to try to get through all of that in the next 2 hours, and hopefully be able to say, yep, this sounds good, let's start putting it into a long-range calendar. If it can't, like Rachel said earlier, quality is more important than timeliness, but I think that is a reasonable goal. That's my thought process. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add to that prior to us signing off? And thank you. This is a bear of a thing, and I think it went really well. Seeing none, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Is that John?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second.
And a second from George. So Cindy, would you read the roll at exactly 7?
Sorry, I have to move. Okay. Skippy.
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
Carson.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Who am I missing? Did I get everybody?
I think so.
Am I missing anybody?
We are adjourned.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Guys, thank you so
Thanks.
much. Everybody have a great day. Bye now.